What's good, YouTube? It's your fucking boy, Insight motherfucking 11, man. And I got a powerful video for you today talking about the physical and mental laziness goddamn epidemic. Because ironically, in a society where we have all this access to all this convenience and shit like that, and technologies and stuff like that, you would think that this would create a society of people that is more productive in their individual life as far as a purpose goes. I'm not talking about a job, because anyone can get a job, but a person working for themselves and becoming valuable and adding value to society, actually having something to offer. Now that's kind of a little bit rare to see, because what I'm saying, we created all these technologies, all these conveniences, where now a person can just go and reward themselves with some type of video, with some type of form they can participate in outside of them, where a person is not necessarily like going through the process to actually go through some type of uncomfortability, go through some type of unfamiliarity. So this way a person can actually experience some natural dopamine release. Now a person experiences that release through abusing convenience, through abusing what's been comfortably provided and put for them right in front of them, right? So, in a time where convenience is at its greatest, right? Ironically, one would think that humanity would be at its most productive times, right? As far as the individual when it comes to purpose. Yet, all this access to what is convenient and what provides us with a source of comfort has made the individual cater to a state of being known as sloth, aka laziness, where now a person may be so indulging, maybe so involved with laziness unknowingly, just because everything around them is so available for them, where now people don't necessarily have to walk outside. A person can actually sit back and go on YouTube and watch a person walk live and shit like that. All types of shit, right? So it's a lot of stuff in society that make a person subconsciously want to cater to sloth and laziness and stuff like that. But that's not a state of being that's going to be productive and profitable. So, that energy, having that energy on a person, right, is going to manifest in them not being valuable to society. And here comes this individual working a job that they don't like, and now they're irritated, now they're pissed off. But a lot of the times, an individual will put themselves in positions they don't like just because they wasn't necessarily paying attention to what they was participating with throughout the day. And once a person accumulates a state of being, a state of mind like that, they may not necessarily ever want to get out of that, just because that's what's normalized within their mind and that's what's seen as normal. And if everyone around us is doing it, then automatically this is what we're gonna quote unquote want to do as well. You know what I'm saying? Right? Sloth or laziness, right? So dopamine itself, the reward chemical that the body releases to experience pleasure after doing a worthwhile task. Let's say a person is working out. Let's say a person make a song. Let's say a person draw. Whatever respective area that you want to jump into as far as a purpose, so you can participate and share and be productive, be profitable in your own lane and stuff like that, right? That chemical is released after doing some task. And then we sit back and look at the task we did. We're like, wow, my work was rewarding, you know what I'm saying? Versus watching a movie. And it's something I'm not, saying no to these things. But what I'm saying is, if you jump into these things too much for the sake of comfortability, that Venus energy, where now a person can be too involved in comfort, too involved in something that they appreciate. But a lot of the times what we appreciate, if we participate in it too much, can actually depreciate us, where now the thing that was making us comfortable, we stayed in that space for so long, now a person might really have to be uncomfortable because of a lack of productivity in their life, just because they cater to that Venus energy too much. So you really got to balance what you're doing with your energies and stuff like that, right? Because when you get into the energy of Venus, getting into the energy of Taurus, you're into the hormonal system and stuff like that, right? The five senses, what a person appreciates as far as, physical density stuff. It could just be food. It can play out in a lot of ways, right? Because once your hormones is attached to these things, a person will seek what their hormones have been programmed to seek. And if a person is not able to govern themselves, aka practice some form of fasting, whether it's physical or mental, to reprogram themselves, recalibrate themselves in a way that allows them to move along the path of purpose, a person may really stick to that hormonal cycle, to what they've been attached to and shit, to the point that like a little kid that doesn't get their hands on their PS5, PS4, to actually experience that dopamine cycle, because their hormones is attached to that experience and stuff like that, right? They might really get pissed off, really irritated when that thing get taken away from them. Like even if a person go to the like to the cafe, their favorite muffin, their favorite donut might not be there, and here go they being pissed off and disappointed, all because their hormones is attached to that thing, and now they base their whole life based upon the comforts and the pleasure and the reward that they get from consuming that things. But pleasures and rewards need to be consumed in a mindful manner. This way we're not overly saturating ourselves with things that don't necessarily serve us in the long term, right? So now this shit is more accessible than ever, because now we can skip tasks that would normally lead to growth. Back back in the day when our survival was what's at stake. So back in the day when we were in tribes, hunter gatherers and stuff like that, we were in situations where people had to develop skills to become bigger and better and work on their skills and talents to be of value to the world, and their respective tribe and stuff like that, to even be considered a tribe leader, or whatever a position a person may be aiming for, right? Because whatever position a person is aiming for, you're gonna have to match that with energy work and the physical work that you exert and stuff like that, to actually accumulate the mind that can actually do these things at a very high level, right? But with the arrival of technologies and systems, theologies, ideologies, which keep in mind is the result of a person, right? You gotta remember, technologies, systems, theologies, ideologies, forms of governing and stuff like that a lot of people normally accept. Keep in mind that a lot of these things was someone else putting their mind to work, coming up with these things and stuff like that, right? In order to be resourceful, which would be the elites of society, which quite fundamentally own the earth at this point, with the average human mind left to be controlled and manipulated, right? Tricked out of doing and being more just by providing an overwhelming amount of ways to distract yourself from growth by seeking comfort and pleasure and love, or I shall even dare say the desires of the flesh, right? It was said that the great Roman Empire even simply fell apart due to the chase and pursuit of pleasure in order to satisfy the lust of the flesh, right? So it's like people that are in positions of power understand, okay, I'm not going to necessarily want to provide resources. I'm going to provide things, information and shit like that for the purpose of limiting a person's awareness, limiting a person's mind towards being a sheep, being a robot, so they can build my world for me. Because if I give you information that can make you more powerful than me, then you're going to overthrow my position. So you see, it's really important for the people that run society to provide and oversaturate and amplify this lower animalistic nature in ourselves, in order for a person to continue working and doing these jobs that a person may not necessarily want to be at, but so they can build the external world. They gotta sometimes manipulate you subconsciously to put yourself in a certain position, where a lot of the times a person does it to themselves, and it requires a person to really take accountability and responsibility so they can get out of that space. So they're not necessarily creating that life and reality, but ultimately it's the person's responsibility, where a person gotta take responsibility for whatever it is they participate with, awareness wise and stuff like that, right? So be careful what you give your energy to, be careful what you give your mind to, because that existence is becoming one with you in a way. A person might love like cake so much, they might go to sleep and just dream about cake and stuff like that. But when you're sleeping, you're just experiencing your subconscious, and then it's like either your subconscious is at work with something that's productive, something that's profitable and stuff like that, or your subconscious can be at work, with some stuff that a person might cater to fleshly fluid wise and stuff like that, right? But it get back into like dream interpretation and things like that, right? Yet God and the angels over the course of humanity's history was inspiring mankind to pursue something greater than themselves, right? The bounty that came with virtue and not the sinful pursuit of vices, right? Because a lot of the times when a person pursues vices, through the vices and stuff like that, a person may sin against themselves, go against themselves, put themselves, quote unquote, in the pit full hell of fire, where a person is so stuck into their density, so stuck into their form of interpreting reality, where a person might not know any other way of going about reality other than the way that they've been, indoctrinated and thought to go about things and stuff like that, right? So, throughout the course of humanity, we can see, different religions, different things that, are pointing towards this theme of, God or the angels or, a higher being and things of that nature, trying to point humanity towards the path of like, growth and stuff like that. I'm not gonna tell you like it's a higher being you gotta follow outside of you. It's really just yourself becoming more so attuned with your purpose, your higher self. This way, it's like you're playing out that character rather than this 3D flesh fluid character. But that takes taking care of the mind and stuff like that, right? Because a lot of the times these vices, these virtues, it's just mentalities that we resonate with, things that we play out. But a person needs to understand how to have that detaching energy as well, right? Right. So through the pursuit of something greater and a picture larger than oneself, something worth sacrificing, transmuting the lower animalistic seeking self to the higher angelic self, right? It is my belief that the lower animalistic self and the pursuit of it has been amplified by the elites in order to keep people in need of an external governor to govern us, because people themselves are chaotic and lack the practicality and logic to create self-sustainable balance, where a person might need something externally to balance things for them and stuff like that, right? As far as the order of the world and shit like that. But people themselves can be in very chaotic spaces internally, emotionally, to the point that a person might not really know how to manage themselves. So a person might need like an external class, like an anger management class or things like that, just to help them with their mind. And there's nothing wrong with education. Education is a very powerful tool for growth, but a lot of the times education itself can become indoctrination and become very limiting if we're not approaching it from a perspective of awareness, right? Where people tend to act and live and do what they are told a lot of the times out of fear rather than out of curiosity and love for today and love for yourself. The tarot card of the devil itself symbolizes one being a slave enchained to one's own desire, right? The elites know if they amplify this and create circumstances and situations for you to do it to yourself, you'll be forever a variable inside of that slave system matrix that they created. Why? And the thing is, why labor and toil for someone else when you can consistently add value to yourself, develop your own systems, and be at the negotiating table as an equal and not as a person with the shorter end of the stick, right? But it's just set up in such a way where it's convenient for a person to go work a job for the rest of their life, where it's convenient for a person to, do certain things because, it's just much more easier than, again, for a person to sit back and put their mind at work constantly every day for them to gain awareness, expand their perspective and stuff like that, expand their possibilities and stuff like that. Because let's say a person is gardening every single day, right? Or, is in the practice of gardening. The more that person gardens, the more perspectives, the more like, especially if they're coming from a space of clarity rather than like an external form of education. Like I said, nothing's wrong with education, but at the same time though, try to balance these things with your own perspective. And we're gonna get into that here in a minute, right? So, because then the terms and agreement and conditions will not be in your favor and shit like that, right? Create a situation that is more favorable for you. I like to create more situations that's flavorful for me because I got my own flavor that I want to bring to the table. You know what I'm saying? Right? But it takes putting the mind to work towards your own ends. It takes clearing out old thoughts and feelings, beliefs that hinder us, and habits and behaviors that don't serve us, right? And our good, right? Ultimately, it takes time, energy, and effort to produce a new cycle of thinking and feeling, a new cycle of mind away from that old space. Because to go from, worker to entrepreneur, it's a whole different shift of, the how much energy you're willing to apply to your life and stuff like that, right? In order to get the results that you want. Because everyone gets exactly what they deserve. Everyone gets exactly what they put in. So if a person is not putting in work, then they're going to get exactly that, be in a position where they need some form of external retirement account. And like I said, nothing wrong with these things. It's not what you do, it's how you do it. So do it in your own way. Just understand that, putting your mind to work is what's going to give a person growth. And right now, we live in times where there's this laziness, physically and mentally, epidemic, where a person doesn't want to put their mind to work. A person would rather go to YouTube and have someone else tell them what stocks to invest in, what assets to invest in, and shit like that, rather than a person And there's nothing wrong with that as well, like I said. But you really want to use your own mind to make your own decisions, because everyone has the ability to sit back and observe patterns to come up with effective strategies and shit like that, right? So ultimately, it takes energy and effort to produce a new cycle of mind. It takes being okay with not knowing what tomorrow brings, right? Where it'll take you, because a lot of people don't like the idea of the unknown. So if a person has some form of stability, security, and safety that's provided for them via their job, that's going to be that easy go-to. But that doesn't develop growth, right? Because the people running the government, the prime minister, the president, whoever the people are that are running the world, even the CEOs of the companies, they don't know necessarily what's going to happen tomorrow, but they approach it with this curiosity. They approach it with this openness, because we create our life consciously. You know what I'm saying? A lot of the times subconsciously, but it's just two different perspectives, or two people are coming from two different perspectives, and that's why two people are in like two completely different positions and stuff like that, right? Yeah, so it takes being okay, not knowing what's gonna happen tomorrow, or where tomorrow is gonna take you, right? It takes uncomfortability. It takes going into what is perceived to be unfamiliar to become familiarized with something, right? And sometimes it takes rebellion for the sake of pursuing uniqueness and originality in that area, right? Where I was talking about, the example of the gardener earlier, right? Sometimes you can rebel against how someone thought you had a garden and find your own unique way of going about these things, your own original way of going about it. Whether it's music, whether it's art, whatever it is, you have access to certain energies that can give you your own unique respective angle when it comes to the pursuit of that purpose and how you go about it, right? And it takes, of course, structure and discipline. A lot of the times, people have their lives structured for them rather than a person structuring their life. So, a person will go from work 9 to 5, come back home, have a beer, put on a show from 6 to 8, and then a person will just go do extra, etc., etc. But a lot of the times, the schedule we're given is just shit that keeps us busy and keeps us addicted to like that reward cycle from seeking those comforts based upon being in spaces where we exerted energy and effort in a job that we don't necessarily like. So being at that job is going to have us in a negative space. When we come back home from being in that negative space, we're going to want to take that out in some way, shape, or form, or deal with it. And that's when a person can start to like do things to cater more so to their flesh, to satisfy their flesh, rather than having a strong mind and just dealing with these uncomfortabilities in a way that will actually see them tomorrow be in a better space slowly and surely and stuff like that, right? Because for me, for example, like the real work always starts when I come back from work. Not really, I do other stuff at work that's related to my purpose, but at the same time though, I dedicate as much time at home after work for my purpose and shit like that, because that comes first. And the reason why it comes first is because it allows me to sacrifice what my flesh believes to be important for something, to add my belief, my faith, imagination, something that I believe is greater than catering to how this feels, versus how giving my time and energy to that higher self, higher space purpose will have me in a position in as far as having more possibilities and having more access to more things and stuff like that, right? So most importantly, it takes someone to take power and control and transform and transmute and go through death to be born anew, right? Where the decay of the old allows for the flourishing of the new. Where a lot of the times a person would rather stay in whatever space that's been, they've been programmed to think and feel like, hey, you know what? This is what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna stay like this. But a lot of the times a person has to go through some form of death, some type of rebirth, and unfortunately, depending on how you want to program the situation when that happens to you, when a negative situation happens to you, where the universe forces you to transform, because a lot of the times a person will subconsciously create a situation themselves where they'll divorce their wife, they'll leave their relationship, they'll leave their job, or etc., etc., just because a person was, subconsciously trying to get out of that space, and a person might create something that's not necessarily favorable when that time comes. So a person really got to learn to take control of their mind. This way, it's like you're taking power and control and transforming things before ahead of time. This way, when you do play out those energies of going through a death, it was something that, you consciously, subconsciously, willingly created a trajectory to go through, so you can create your life consciously versus having some type of subconscious programming running in your mind and shit like that, catering to this, laziness, physical, mental laziness epidemic where a person might refuse to put in the energy, work, the time, and the effort to actually like transform themselves and shit like that. With that being said, everybody, that's all I have for today's video. This was the physical and mental laziness epidemic. I'm gonna see y'all in tomorrow's motherfucking video. Peace.